Nihilistic.
Optimistic.
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 We were at a party or a gathering of people, and I don't usually say very much, so things spontaneously happen. There was a container on the floor, it might have been a drink or something, and I just booted it against the wall and it went and it was a great act, and this younger artist looked at it with this kind of cheeky face and he kind of said, "Tim, stop being so nihilistic." And I was thinking about that. He's very shamanistic. Being a younger artist, he's kind of he views his generation as being more optimistic, whereas our kind of generation perhaps we're a little bit more punk, a bit more nihilistic. So I went away with this kind of title in my head: optimistic, nihilistic, and I said to Sue, I think we want to do a show, I want to curate a show called Optimistic, Nihilistic, and Sue just went, "No, it's nihilistic, optimistic." So immediately we were like two scorpions in a box, and this kind of dialogue began, this kind of confrontation began.
The title was the last part of the show. I mean, you make the work, and we've been working on this specific body of work for, I would say, 3 to 4 years. I mean, we go out, we live in Shoreditch, we go out and people throw stuff away and we bring stuff back. We can't bear to see waste. Anything will be useful for something one day. So we'd accumulated this massive broken furniture and particularly step ladders. I think the starting point for each sculpture in this body of work was always a pair of step ladders, because it represented a figure, like 2 legs, I think, and we built on that. So these are the largest shadow works we've ever made. They've been built over a period of time, over the last 3 or so years. And if you look back at the first piece, it was very much it's called Nasty Pieces of Work. And it's very much a full figure of me, the shadow of me, looking quite strong and powerful. And the image of Tim, it was left at just his arm hanging. And for me, Tim's got a very sculptural arm, and I just thought, well, that is the portrait of Tim. It didn't need to be finished. Then we went on to make a second piece, Wild Mood Swings, which is full figures back to back. And then we made the third piece, which is called Self-Imposed Misery, which is just Tim on his own, full figure. And then there was the fourth piece called The Individual, me on its own. And then the final piece called Youngman. And I guess it showed a kind of breaking up of a relationship as well. I didn't realise that at the time, but it was very much about together, not facing each other. And then the final 3 were individual sculptures. So we sort of went off on our own after that. So it kind of told a bit more of a personal story, I think. I didn't realise that at the time.
Blimey. They actually moved out as well, didn't they? It was like save the relationship or save the art. So obviously we decided to save the art. I think mistakes are like something that we've really embraced a lot. And particularly this piece behind us, which is called My Beautiful Mistake, was really an exercise. If you call it an exercise, it was a pleasurable experience of just then allowing mistakes to unfold. Really, like, you have an idea about how to do something, but you kind of, I don't know if budget is the right way, but you sort of develop your own language of piecing things together, which is not measured. It's kind of wrong, but it actually makes sense in the right kind of way. It holds it together. And if you keep following that, something unfolds. Ultimately it's going to be quite original, I think.
Tim and I are both massive music fans, something that we have in common. And we were approached a couple of years ago, but we weren't quite sure exactly how we were going to express this. And then it just seemed quite obvious when we came up with the title for the show, right at the end. that we would do a spoken word piece where one of us would say the word nihilistic and the other would be optimistic. And so we went into the studio and spoke one word, the other person said the other word, and it went on and on and on, as much as we could bear it, nihilistic, optimistic. And it ended up being, the sounding of the word nihilistic became very droll, and speaking the word optimistic became very up. And so throughout the 5 or so minutes I think we were recording this, it ended up being quite like an argument between the two of us.
It did, yeah.
It was quite intense.
It was very, very intense. After saying one word for sort of 60 times.
It began to lose its meaning.
It becomes meaningless.
And then I started wondering whether I was actually saying the right word, because I was saying it that often that it just became numb.
I had to actually put my ears at one point. I thought I was going to start laughing.
We were big record collectors, always have been, always will be. Even when vinyl was out of fashion, we were still buying vinyl and not selling it or taking it down the dump like my sister did. My sister dumped her David Bowie albums down the tip, and I've never ever forgiven her for it. But I guess that was, a lot of it was, we were too young to be punks first time round, or only time round. But we did, we were massively influenced by the aesthetic of punk. So when we had the idea for the record, Tim said, let's get Dennis Morris to photograph us for the cover. In fact, no, it wasn't for the cover. You said, let's get Dennis Morris to take a portrait of us anyhow.
We
were very much...
you know when you get vinyl records and you tend to you have your stack and then you put one on the front and it's probably, it's 5 stacks and they're all like faces, aren't they? You know? Or if you're playing your record, you can put a piece of vinyl up and there's the face, just so you can see what you're playing. Yeah. And that was a really good one by Public Image Limited, wasn't it?
First issue.
First issue. Extraordinary portrait of John Lydon. And he just, it's a very, very haunting image.
Post Sex Pistols, so it wasn't your classic Johnny Rotten photograph, it was when he was like...
Just complete opposite, isn't it?
It was a vacant stare, it was a very nihilistic image.
And he's kind of pasty and all it's sort of Jehovah's Witness or something. It's a very, very haunting image, and it just, it became apparent it'd be lovely to kind of emulate. I mean, you know, who did that photograph? So obviously Dennis took that photograph, and he was quite excited about sort of following that kind of aesthetic. I think there's a great essence to just, sometimes just, if you get stuck, just do the obvious, you know? Or do something that's very like, just put something there in front of you. Because you've got it's all going on just behind your eyes. And you just got to just put it here, right in front of you. As soon as you put it on the table, everyone has to then deal with it. It becomes this super kind of energy force, you know, that you have to kind of deal with this object.
Nihilistic.
Optimistic.
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 Nihilistic.
Optimistic.